everyone. Thanks for stopping by and seeing what I'm up to. My name is Silky Feather, and you can call me Silky. We're at Silky Feather's Nest, and we are about to listen to Unfuck Your Habitat. You're Better Than Your Mess by Rachel Hoffman. Read by Emily Wu Zeller. Let's hit it.
Because it's so difficult to clean and organize everything thoroughly and perfectly all at once, perfectionists can get discouraged by what seems like a lack of results and just give up. Learning that progress is incremental and not necessarily flawless can be a huge step toward getting a messy house under control, a little bit at a time. There's no end to the reasons that people don't or can't clean their home, and there's no one type or category of person who needs help with housekeeping. Lots of people in lots of situations find themselves not up to the task of keeping their home in order. Whether that's due to a shortage of time, a lack of skills, physical limitations, or a loss of motivation, there is hope. With practice, focus, and, most important, a solid but flexible game plan, everyone can get their mess under control and transform their home from something they're embarrassed and stressed out by into something that's comfortable and calm. And about this gender role bullshit, as we've already discussed, there are a whole bunch of reasons why someone might not know what to do in order to keep a clean home. One of the reasons that's unfortunately all too common is that a lot of people still buy into the idea that cleaning a home and maintaining a household is women's work. Meaning, they think men are automatically off the hook for housework simply because they're men. A very common, but especially obnoxious, assertion is that men just don't see the mess the same way women do. This is an infuriating viewpoint that, unfortunately, lots and lots of people believe. Like, so many people. This tired old trope is meant to explain why men often don't do their fair share of housework, and why all of those domestic responsibilities generally fall to women. And it's complete bullshit. Everyone sees the mess. There's just a huge number of people who believe it's not a man's job to do anything about it. Before we dive too deep into a discussion of gender roles and expectations and how they all get wrapped up with household duties, there are a few things to keep in mind. First, it isn't true that men are bad at housekeeping and women are good at it. I can name dozens of examples from my own experience that contradict that. I'm sure you can too. What we can say, however, is that we are at least somewhat socially conditioned to see those roles as the default, and anyone who doesn't fit into them as an exception to the rule. Also, we should remember that this mindset is fundamentally traditional and heteronormative and not 100% applicable in modern life. The typical nuclear family, mom, dad, and a couple of kids, is less and less common now, with families and households instead being made up in endless configurations that don't fall within those very stringent, very traditionally defined parameters. So when we challenge our perceptions of those gender roles, we also need to challenge how we define family and household, and make some adjustments to accurately reflect reality. That said, the idea that men are not good at housekeeping is a really pervasive societal perception that has infiltrated almost every aspect of modern life. Advertising, TV shows, gender-directed media like magazines, and irritating social media memes all reinforce the fact that men just don't do housework. Or that if they try, they're hilariously inept at it and need a woman to set them straight and do it right. Or that a wife's or a mom's job is to keep the house clean, regardless of her job or responsibilities outside the home, even though she may have as many professional demands on her time as her male partner, if not more. Or that a bachelor's home is expected to be a disaster. That is, until his mom comes and cleans it up, or he finds a girlfriend to give his place a woman's touch. And every time we repeat these stereotypes or accept them as fact, We not only help advance these outdated gender norms and place an unearned burden on women, but we also demean and infantilize men by tacitly accepting that they just don't or can't do housework. Lots of men, especially those raised with more traditional upbringings like that nuclear family we were just talking about, see a mess, figure it'll get taken care of soon, and then cease thinking about it at all. Lots of women see the same mess, figure they'll need to take care of it soon, and start trying to figure out how to make that happen. See the difference? Women are conditioned to see dirt and messes as their responsibility to clean up, and men are conditioned to see dirt and messes in a way that requires no further action on their part. It's the interpretation of what they're seeing, not whether they actually see it. So it's not accurate to say that men don't see the mess. It's bullshit. It's what happens after the mess is observed that matters. Is it our job to do something about that mess? Or are we just passively observing it with the expectation that someone else is going to take care of it? Once again, I'm not saying that men are terrible at housework and women are good at it. That would be just as ridiculous as saying that men are incapable of seeing messes just because they're men. Tons of men are great at housework, and tons of women are terrible at it. And most people, regardless of gender, fall somewhere in between. Many households have an easy and equitable division of labor, unrestrained by gender roles, and they're doing just fine. Gender-based housework is clearly, then, not any kind of biological imperative, but a social one. We each have our own natural tendencies, but those tendencies are influenced by everyday social cues and expectations. No one is born knowing how to do housework. We all have to learn it somehow. Some people learn it by being taught within their home by parents, siblings, or other family members at an early age. Other people figure it out on their own through trial and error when they first start living outside the family home. Still others teach themselves through reading, research, and observation, which also includes a fair amount of trial and error. The point is, there's no innate housekeeping gene that's only passed on to girls. Everyone has the same ability and capacity to learn these skills. And it's considerably easier to learn at a young age. By starting young, children grow up with the necessary habits for keeping a home clean, and learn the basic skills that will help them keep their mess under control for the rest of their lives. So that's why, within the family home, it's so important to teach all children these skills, regardless of gender and age. Anyone who grows up with these skills is at an advantage over those of us who need to learn them later on, since kids tend to learn things with an ease that most of us adults don't possess. Not to mention that being brought up in a household where everyone is expected to carry their fair share goes a long way to normalizing the idea that housework is for everyone. In addition, there's no small amount of learned helplessness associated with gender roles and cleaning. Let's go back to those god-awful social media memes and eye-rollingly terrible TV commercials, poking fun at how men are just hopeless around the house. They don't know how to do laundry! Isn't that hilarious? No, it's not. All those dramatized examples of how they can't get their own children clean, fed, and dressed, and how the smallest routine task leads to catastrophe or slapstick comedy, and how a woman needs to swoop in and fix it, effortlessly, while chuckling about how endearing it all is, instead of fast-pitching a bottle of glass cleaner across the room in frustration and anger, which is a much more likely real-world reaction to that much obnoxious learned helplessness. Going hand in hand with learned helplessness is the concept of strategic incompetence. Picture being asked or expected to do something you really hate. For example, the dishes. So you kind of half-ass the job because you hate it, and the dishes don't really get all that clean. Then the person who asked you to do the dishes gets exasperated and ends up re-washing them and never asks you to do them again. Which is totally what you wanted in the first place, right? Well, that works out pretty well for you, but it's a shitty thing to do to the person who wants and needs you to do your part. It's not that you don't know how to or physically can't complete the task competently. You're being crappy at it so that you won't be expected to do it again. And that's not a great thing to do to someone. It's fundamentally selfish. Sometimes we have to do things we don't enjoy because it's a part of living in a home. And pretending to suck at something so you won't have to do it again is just rude. I mean, are we serious about teaching people to believe that if you do something terribly enough, you'll never be expected to do it again? I hope we all realize how absurd that is. When children are learning how to do things, we don't take one imperfect attempt as a failure and cease expecting them to acquire that skill forever. We expect them to keep trying until they get it right. This isn't a cycle that's only applicable to children. If you can't do something well, you keep doing it until you can. You use what resources you can find to get better at it. You don't just shrug it off with, "Oh well, I'm terrible at this and should therefore never be expected to try again." Come on! We're doing men, and anyone else who's new to acquiring these skills, an incredible disservice when we accept this as some kind of fact, letting it stand that we think they're somehow not capable of acquiring and perfecting new skills. Any discussion of gender roles, norms, and expectations invariably gets people's hackles up, making them feel attacked, stereotyped, or belittled. So it's very important to realize that all of this isn't necessarily the fault of any individual person, and it certainly doesn't apply across the board. Whether or not someone, or someone's family, significant other, or peer group, buys into or believes these gender stereotypes, the fact remains that they exist, and they're shoved down our throats and subconsciously embedded in our brains at every given opportunity. How many men get praised or acknowledged for doing things that women do thanklessly all the time? By giving the impression that it's remarkable when a man completes the basic tasks of domestic living, we're reinforcing the fact that we, as a society, think that this is unusual. That men should be congratulated for doing women's work. That women are lucky when their partner does half the domestic work. It's almost irrelevant if the people who are involved actually believe this, because society believes it. Why do we accept the idea that it's noteworthy when someone cleans up a mess they helped make? Silly.
And I'm going to cut it there. I went over a little bit of 10 minutes, but enjoy. I was really into the book for the moment there. I was really listening good and got carried away. I hope you have a great day. Please be kind to one another. This is Silky Feather at Silky Feather's Nest Audio Book Club. Please like and subscribe. This was part 3.
Silly, right?
Uh-oh. I'll go back 30 seconds.